A federal court has ordered that a rare ancient artifact known as the Gilgamesh Dream Tablet must be surrendered to authorities. The 3,500-year-old tablet from what is now Iraq bears text from the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the world's oldest works of literature.
"4,000 years ago, the Epic of Gilgamesh claimed something almost impossible: that the people of Uruk diverted the entire Euphrates River just to bury their king in the dry riverbed below, then let the water flow back over him, sealing his tomb forever. For decades, archaeologists dismissed it as myth. Then, in the early 2000s, German researchers scanning the ruins of Uruk found something that stopped them cold: an ancient riverbed, exactly where the legend said it would be, with a structure underneath. No one has ever excavated it. To this day, the tomb has only been seen by a machine. Here's why. The king who may have been real. For thousands of years, most people believed Gilgamesh was only a legend. He was famous as the hero of one of the world's oldest stories, the Epic of Gilgamesh. In those ancient tales, he was described as a powerful ruler with almost superhuman strength. He fought giant monsters, battled wild bulls, traveled through dangerous forests, and searched for the secret of eternal life. Because these stories were so fantastic, many historians once assumed that Gilgamesh was completely fictional, much like the heroes of other ancient myths. However, archaeologists and historians have found evidence suggesting there may have been a real person behind the legend. One of the most important pieces of evidence comes from a document known as the Sumerian King List. This was an ancient record created by the Sumerians, one of the earliest civilizations in human history. The list contains the names of kings who supposedly ruled various cities in Mesopotamia, located in present-day Iraq. Gilgamesh appears on this list as the fifth king of the city of Uruk, one of the most important cities of the ancient world. According to the king list, Gilgamesh ruled for 26 years. Most historians do not believe this number is accurate. In ancient times, it was common for writers to exaggerate the achievements of famous rulers. Giving kings extremely long reigns was a way of making them seem greater and more important than ordinary people. For that reason, scholars view the 126-year reign as a myth rather than a historical fact. Even so, Gilgamesh's appearance on the king list is significant. His name is included alongside several other rulers who are known to have existed. Archaeologists have found inscriptions, building records, and other evidence confirming that some of these kings were real historical figures. Because Gilgamesh appears among them, many experts believe he was probably a real king as well. Today, scholars who study the languages, history, and writings of ancient Mesopotamia, known as Archeologists, generally agree that Gilgamesh was likely a historical ruler. They believe he may have ruled Uruk around 2700 BCE during a period called the Early Dynastic Age of Sumer. While there is no direct evidence proving every detail of his life, the existence of a king named Gilgamesh is considered quite possible. The legendary stories about him were probably created long after his death. Over generations, people passed down tales about the famous king from one storyteller to another. As the stories spread, they became larger and more dramatic. Real events may have been mixed with imagination, eventually turning Gilgamesh into a heroic figure who could challenge monsters and seek immortality. So, while the Gilgamesh of legend may never have existed exactly as described in the epic poems, the man who inspired those stories probably did. He may have walked the streets of ancient Uruk, ruled its people, and left such a strong impression that his memory survived for more than 4,000 years. Today, archaeologists continue to study the ruins of Uruk in southern Iraq, searching for more clues about the real king hidden behind one of history's greatest legends, the strangest burial ever recorded. What makes the story of Gilgamesh's tomb different from many other ancient lost tomb legends is not just the king himself, but the unusual way he was supposedly buried. Most stories about missing tombs are based on rumors, myths, or vague descriptions. However, the account connected to Gilgamesh includes details that sound surprisingly practical and specific, which is why it continues to interest historians and archaeologists today. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the most important events is the death of Gilgamesh's closest friend, Enkidu. After losing him, Gilgamesh becomes deeply afraid of death. He realizes that no matter how powerful he is, he cannot escape mortality. This fear drives him on a long journey in search of eternal life. He travels great distances, meets mysterious figures, and searches for a way to live forever. In the end, however, he fails. Like all humans, he must eventually face death. While the epic focuses on his quest for immortality, another ancient Sumerian poem tells a different part of the story: the death and burial of Gilgamesh. Scholars consider this poem an important source because it provides details about what supposedly happened after the king died. According to the text, the people of Uruk gave Gilgamesh a very unusual burial. The poem says that they temporarily changed the course of the Euphrates River. They redirected the water away from part of the riverbed, exposing dry ground underneath. Once the area was dry, they built a tomb there and buried Gilgamesh along with valuable objects, gifts, and offerings meant to accompany him into the afterlife. After the burial was completed, the people supposedly allowed the river to flow back into its original course. The water then covered the tomb once again, burying it beneath layers of mud, silt, and flowing water. If this really happened, the tomb would have become almost impossible to find, hidden beneath the river itself. What makes this account so interesting is that it does not sound like a simple, poetic description. Instead of using symbolic language about a king returning to nature, the text describes a series of actions that seem very specific. First, the river is diverted, then the tomb is built, then the burial takes place, and finally, the river is restored. The story reads almost like a set of instructions. Accomplishing such a project would not have been easy. The Euphrates was one of the largest and most important rivers in ancient Mesopotamia. Redirecting even part of its flow would have required considerable knowledge and planning. The people responsible would have needed to understand canals, dams, water control systems, and flooding. They also would have needed a large workforce to complete the job before the river naturally returned to its course. Because of these details, some archaeologists began looking at the story in a different way. Instead of treating it as a symbolic legend, they wondered whether it might preserve a memory of a real event. Perhaps the people of Uruk actually carried out a massive engineering project to create a hidden royal tomb. While no one has proven that such a tomb exists, the detailed description has led some researchers to believe that the story could be based on something that truly happened thousands of years ago. Uruk, the city that never stopped giving answers. Any search for Gilgamesh's tomb must begin with the ancient city of Uruk, the place he is believed to have ruled nearly 5,000 years ago. The ruins of Uruk are located near the modern site of Tel Warqa in southern Iraq's Muthanna province. To archaeologists and historians, Uruk is one of the most important places in human history because it is often considered one of the world's first true cities. Long before famous cities like Athens, Rome, or even Babylon reached their peak, Uruk was already a thriving urban center. It grew during a time when many people elsewhere still lived in small villages. At its height, Uruk may have been home to tens of thousands of people, making it one of the largest settlements on Earth. For the ancient world, this was an extraordinary achievement. Uruk was not just large, it was also highly advanced for its time. The city contained massive temple complexes built to honor the gods, wide streets, and carefully planned neighborhoods. It played a major role in the development of civilization itself. In fact, many historians believe that some of the earliest forms of writing were created there. Ancient scribes used clay tablets and a writing system known as cuneiform to record information about trade, government, religion, and daily life. The city was also famous for its complex network of canals. These waterways helped transport people and goods while supplying water to farms and homes. The system was so impressive that one researcher later described Uruk as being like Venice in the desert. The canals helped transform the surrounding land into a productive and prosperous region, allowing the city to support a large population. Because Uruk was so important, archaeologists have spent more than a century studying its ruins. German excavation teams first began major archaeological work there in the early 1900s, and research has continued on and off ever since. Over the decades, these excavations have uncovered a remarkable amount of information about ancient Mesopotamian life. Researchers have discovered thousands of cuneiform tablets, the remains of enormous temples, sections of city walls, workshops, houses, and entire residential neighborhoods. These findings have helped historians understand how some of the earliest city dwellers lived, worked, worshipped, and governed themselves. Few archaeological sites in the world have provided so much information about the beginnings of civilization. Yet, despite all these discoveries, one mystery remains unsolved. No tomb that can be confidently identified as belonging to Gilgamesh has ever been found. Archaeologists have uncovered many important structures at Uruk, but the burial place described in ancient texts has remained hidden. If the stories are true, and Gilgamesh was buried beneath a diverted section of the Euphrates River, his tomb may still lie buried under layers of mud and sediment, untouched for thousands of years. This missing tomb is one reason the legend continues to fascinate people today. Uruk has revealed countless secrets through archaeology, offering an incredible window into the ancient world. However, the burial of its most famous king remains a mystery. The city that gave the world one of its oldest literary heroes has surrendered much of its history, but the final resting place of Gilgamesh, if it exists at all, has yet to be found. That unanswered question keeps historians, archaeologists, and curious readers searching for clues even now. Seeing underground without digging. To understand why the mystery of Gilgamesh's tomb became exciting again in modern times, it helps to understand a scientific tool called magnetometry. Most people have never heard of it, but it has become one of the most useful methods in archaeology. Instead of immediately digging into the ground, researchers can use magnetometry to look beneath the surface and find hidden structures without disturbing the site. Traditional archaeology usually involves excavation. Archaeologists carefully remove layers of soil and record everything they find. While this method is very effective, it takes a great deal of time, money, and effort. Once an area is excavated, it can never be returned to exactly the way it was before. Because of this, researchers often prefer to study a site first using non-invasive techniques. Magnetometry is one of the best tools for doing that. A magnetometer is a scientific instrument that measures tiny changes in the Earth's magnetic field. Different materials buried underground affect the magnetic field in different ways. Things such as ancient mud brick walls, stone foundations, fire pits, ash deposits, roads, and even old canals leave magnetic traces that can be detected by the instrument. These traces are often invisible from the surface, but a magnetometer can reveal them. The process is fairly simple in theory. A researcher walks across a site carrying the instrument while following a carefully planned grid pattern. As they move back and forth, the magnetometer records magnetic readings from the ground below. After collecting thousands of measurements, a computer combines the data to create a map showing what may be hidden underground. Many archaeologists compare this process to giving the Earth a medical scan, similar to how an MRI allows doctors to see inside the human body without surgery. Uruk turned out to be an ideal place for this technology. One reason was that the ancient city is located in a remote area. There are no large modern buildings directly on top of the site, and the nearest villages are some distance away. Because there is very little modern development nearby, there are fewer magnetic disturbances that could interfere with the readings. This allowed researchers to collect unusually clear data. In 2001, a team of German researchers began a major magnetometry survey at Uruk. The project included geophysicists Jörg Fassbinder and Helmut Becker from the Bavarian State Department of Monuments, working together with archaeologist Margarethe van Es. Over several field seasons, the team carefully walked across large sections of the ancient city, collecting magnetic measurements and checking their results repeatedly. The work required patience. Day after day, the researchers crossed the site, recording data and building a detailed picture of what lay hidden beneath the surface. As more information was collected, a remarkable image of the ancient city began to emerge. The magnetic maps revealed streets, building foundations, temple complexes, garden areas, and an extensive network of canals. These discoveries showed that much of the city remained preserved underground. The findings also matched several descriptions found in ancient texts, including the Epic of Gilgamesh. The maps suggested that Uruk really did contain gardens and waterways that helped people move around the city and transport goods. The canal system was especially impressive. It appeared far more advanced than many researchers had expected. Because of this network of waterways, Jörg Fassbinder famously described Uruk as being like Venice in the desert. The magnetometry survey not only revealed hidden parts of one of the world's oldest cities, but also provided new clues that encouraged archaeologists to keep searching for the lost tomb of Gilgamesh. The discovery that changed the conversation. It was during this multi-year survey that the team found something that turned this from folklore into an active archaeological mystery. Among the readings, the most sensational anomaly appeared in the old bed of the Euphrates, just outside the main mound of Uruk. The river's course has shifted dramatically over the past 4,000 years. In Gilgamesh's era, it ran directly alongside the city, but today it flows many kilometers away. Inside that ancient, dried-up channel, the magnetometer picked up the outline of what looked like a large, man-made structure sitting right in the middle of where the river itself used to flow. According to a later report, the building complex identified within the former Euphrates riverbed bears structural similarity to the description of Gilgamesh's tomb in the epic, though the team was careful to stress this resemblance is interpretive, not a confirmed identification. The location, positioning, and even the orientation lined up with the burial scene described in the ancient poem closely enough that researchers couldn't simply dismiss it. Margarethe van Es, one of the lead archaeologists on the project, addressed the find directly in interviews at the time. The construction could correspond to the verses in the epic describing Gilgamesh's burial near the city in the Euphrates, but determining whether it was actually a tomb rather than something else entirely would require an excavation of the site. And that's exactly the part that's never happened. Why nobody has ever finished the dig. This is the part of the story most videos skip entirely, and it's the real answer to why did they stop. It wasn't a curse, it wasn't anything supernatural. It was Iraq's modern history. The most significant phase of this survey work, including the riverbed anomaly, came together in the early 2000s, the same period the Iraq War began in 2003. Archaeological fieldwork across the entire country was disrupted for years afterward by active conflict, the collapse of site security, and widespread looting of museums and excavation sites. Uruk itself suffered damage and looting in the chaos that followed the invasion, like many other Mesopotamian sites left without protection. In the years since, a combination of ongoing political instability, limited international funding for large-scale excavation, and the technical difficulty of digging into a buried, waterlogged riverbed structure has kept any team from mounting a full excavation of the anomaly Fassbinder and Van Ess's survey identified. The structure has been scanned. It has been mapped, measured, and written about in academic papers. It has never been opened. Years later, when pressed directly on what the find actually represented, Fassbinder himself gave a careful, deliberately modest answer. Responding to a researcher who reached out to him, he stated plainly that he never claimed nor excavated anything proving they had found the grave of Gilgamesh, only that the magnetogram image contained a feature resembling descriptions of the location of his grave. That single quote from the geophysicist who found the anomaly in the first place is probably the most honest summary of where this mystery actually stands. What we actually know versus what's still a guess. It's worth slowing down here because it's incredibly easy for a story like this to drift from intriguing archaeological lead into confirmed discovery. And that drift is exactly how misinformation spreads online. So, here's the honest accounting. What's confirmed is that Gilgamesh's name appears in genuine historical records, not just later myth, placing him among real, otherwise verified kings of Uruk. A real ancient channel of the Euphrates exists exactly where the epic places it, running alongside the ruins of Uruk. A clear subsurface anomaly, a man-made structure, was detected inside that channel using magnetometry in the early 2000s. The team itself published their findings, noting they detected the remains of a building in the former riverbed, which may be interpreted as a burial. What's not confirmed is that the structure is actually a tomb at all, that it belongs specifically to Gilgamesh, or that any human remains or grave goods exist inside it. Magnetometry can tell researchers that something solid and man-made is buried there. It cannot tell them what that something is. As the original research paper itself concluded, whether this building is the grave of the famous King Gilgamesh, as described in the epic, must remain speculative. Until an actual excavation happens, shovels in the ground, not just magnetic readings. Every claim about Gilgamesh's tomb is an informed hypothesis built on a 4,000-year-old poem and a set of magnetic scans, not a confirmed archaeological discovery. Anyone telling you otherwise is skipping the most important sentence in the entire research record. It must remain speculative. The politics buried alongside the tomb. There's a reason this particular mystery has stayed frozen for over 2 decades instead of being resolved one way or the other. And it has nothing to do with the difficulty of archaeology itself. Iraq sits at the center of one of the richest concentrations of ancient sites on Earth, and also one of the most politically unstable regions for sustained long-term research. Major excavation projects require years of planning, international funding, government permits, and on-the-ground security for foreign and local teams alike. Each of those pieces has been difficult to secure in Iraq for most of the past 2 decades, through war, insurgency, and the disruption of national infrastructure. Add to that the practical challenge of the site itself. Excavating inside an old riverbed means dealing with unstable, water-saturated soil that can collapse or shift as it's exposed. Very different from digging into the dry, stable mounds where most of Uruk's other discoveries were made. It's a harder, riskier, more expensive dig than almost anything else on the site. Put those two problems together, geopolitical instability and genuine engineering difficulty, and you get exactly what's happened. A discovery important enough to be published in academic journals and discussed on national television documentaries, yet never significant enough in the eyes of funding bodies to justify the risk of a full excavation in an active conflict zone. why this mystery still matters. Even without a confirmed tomb, the search matters for a much bigger reason than simply finding one king's bones. It's a test case for how much literal truth can survive inside something we call myth. The Epic of Gilgamesh was composed, copied, and rewritten over more than 1,000 years, passed between multiple Mesopotamian civilizations, Sumerian, then Akkadian, then Babylonian, each adding and adapting the story. And yet a specific, almost mundane engineering detail, rerouting a river to conceal a burial, survived all of that retelling essentially intact, right down to matching the physical geography of a real, identifiable ancient riverbed. If archaeologists ever do excavate that anomaly and find a genuine early dynastic-era tomb consistent with the king's burial, it would be one of the strongest pieces of physical evidence ever uncovered connecting a figure from the world's oldest surviving epic poem to an actual flesh-and-blood human being. It wouldn't just confirm a folktale, it would confirm that an entire ancient civilization's engineering capability, recorded only in poetry, was real, and that the poets who described it weren't exaggerating nearly as much as we assumed. Until that dig happens, the tomb of history's first literary hero remains exactly where the poem and the magnetometer left it. Underground, unopened, sitting quietly beneath a dry stretch of Iraqi desert that used to be a river, waiting for someone to finally bring a shovel.